The rain fell in soft, persistent sheets over the city, turning the streets into mirrors of gray and gold. Neon signs shimmered in puddles, reflecting off the polished sidewalks as pedestrians hurried along with umbrellas. Inside a sleek black car, Marcus Langley, CEO of Langley Enterprises, stared out the window, his mind in turmoil. Today was the day of Eleanor West's wedding. Eleanor, his ex-fiancée, the woman he had loved and lost, was marrying another man. And he was going, against better judgment, against the tight knot of resentment in his chest, because of a promise he had made. "Marcus," his assistant said softly from the passenger seat, "are you sure about bringing her?" He didn't look at her. "I promised," he said. "And she's not just anyone. She's a friend who needs this." Her brows knit. "You're bringing a stranger to your ex's wedding?" "Yes," Marcus replied curtly. "It's not about me, it's about her." Meanwhile, across town, Lila Evans adjusted her simple coat and scarf, her heart hammering in her chest. She had never imagined she'd be at the center of a billionaire CEO's plans, especially not one as tense and private as Marcus Langley. She was standing outside a small cafe when his driver pulled up. The tinted windows opened, revealing Marcus himself. "You ready?" he asked. Lila blinked. "Ready? I don't know what I'm doing here." Marcus gave her a small, rare smile. "Just trust me, follow my lead, and remember, nothing is as it seems today." Her stomach twisted. She had no idea what he meant, but she got in anyway. At the wedding venue, the rain had stopped. The manicured gardens glistened, the stone paths damp but clean. Guests arrived in black limousines and sleek SUVs, umbrellas tucked away as they entered the grand hall. Chandeliers sparkled, the aroma of fresh flowers filled the air, and the sound of piano music floated through the halls. Marcus and Lila arrived quietly. He guided her through the crowd, introducing her as a colleague, someone he had been working with overseas. Lila noticed the subtle looks from guests, some curious, some suspicious. But Marcus didn't care. "They're all watching," Lila whispered. Marcus glanced at her, expression unreadable. "Good. Let them." Inside, Eleanor West stood radiant in a flowing white gown, her hair styled in intricate curls, a delicate lace veil framing her face. She smiled as guests applauded, unaware of the storm brewing in the eyes of one man at the back of the room. Marcus's gaze lingered on her for a moment too long. He remembered the laughter, the arguments, the plans they had made together before everything fell apart. But today wasn't about the past. It was about something, or someone entirely unexpected. As he guided Lila to their seats near the back, he felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Something familiar tugged at him. He couldn't place it at first. The ceremony began. Vows were exchanged. Rings slid onto fingers. Applause, smiles. And yet, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was different this time. Something he hadn't anticipated. Halfway through, a photographer directed Marcus to move. He stepped aside, adjusting his tie, when Lila nudged him. "Look," she whispered. Marcus turned, and the sight made his breath catch. Across the room, among the guests, was a woman standing with a quiet presence, watching the ceremony with attentive eyes. She wasn't dressed extravagantly, but there was a poise, a calm certainty about her that Marcus immediately recognized, though he couldn't place it. His mind raced. Who was she? And why did she feel familiar? "She's not a guest," Marcus muttered, more to himself than to Lila. Lila glanced confused. "What do you mean?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't know, but I think I'm about to find out." As the ceremony ended, guests mingled for photographs and congratulations. Marcus observed her from across the room. Every movement, every glance, was measured and deliberate. There was something compelling about her presence, a quiet intelligence that drew him in despite himself. Then she smiled, and in that instant, Marcus's world tilted. He knew who she really was, the stranger he had brought, the one he promised would remain in the background, was not a random companion. She had a connection to Eleanor, to his past, and most importantly, to secrets he thought he had buried long ago. And just like that, the carefully constructed plan he had carried into the wedding began to unravel. As guests moved toward the reception hall, Marcus leaned closer to Lila. "Stay close to me," he said. Lila frowned. "Why? I don't—" Marcus cut her off. "Trust me, everything is about to get complicated." For the first time that day, Lila realized this wedding wasn't just about vows and celebrations. There were truths hidden beneath the smiles, lies wrapped in polite conversation, and a revelation waiting for Marcus that could change everything. He glanced at Eleanor again. The woman he had once loved was smiling, oblivious to the storm gathering just behind her. And Marcus knew, tonight nothing would be as it seemed. The reception hall gleamed with gold accents, crystal chandeliers, and the soft hum of conversation. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the space, masking the tension that Marcus felt creeping through his chest. He guided Lila through the crowd, keeping a careful eye on the woman who had appeared like a quiet storm in the back of the room. "Who is she?" Lila asked, curiosity lacing her voice. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He had a sinking feeling that the moment of revelation was imminent, and he needed to be prepared. Every instinct in him screamed that the woman's presence was no coincidence. He watched her carefully. She wasn't mingling. She wasn't taking photographs. She simply observed, taking in every detail, every interaction, as if measuring the room, assessing the dynamics. Something in her gaze made him uneasy, sharp, intelligent, and deeply familiar. A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne flutes. Marcus grabbed two, handing one to Lila. She took it cautiously, glancing at him. "You've been quiet since we arrived," she said. "I don't know what's going on, but I feel like there's more to this than a simple wedding." Marcus took a slow sip of his drink, his eyes scanning the crowd. "There is, and you need to stay out of it for now." Lila frowned, but she didn't argue. She had learned quickly that Marcus Langley wasn't a man to be questioned lightly, especially when he was focused. The woman moved closer to the center of the room now, standing near the head table where Eleanor and her new husband were seated. Marcus felt a jolt, a memory surfacing unexpectedly. The way she carried herself, her posture, the subtle gestures, he had seen them before. He leaned toward Lila. She's connected to Eleanor, more than I thought, and I have a feeling she's about to reveal something critical. Lila's eyes widened. "Reveal what?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't know yet, but I need to find out." As if on cue, the woman approached Eleanor, speaking softly. Eleanor's expression changed from joyous to confused. Whispers rippled through the nearby guests. Marcus felt a pang of recognition. He knew the significance of this interaction before he even understood the details. He moved closer, keeping his composure. The woman handed Eleanor a folded envelope. Eleanor glanced at it, then at the woman, and then opened it cautiously. Marcus's heart thudded in his chest. Inside was a photograph that Marcus had thought lost years ago, a photograph that held a secret no one was supposed to know. Eleanor's hands trembled. Her smile faltered. Gasps came from the nearby guests. Marcus finally recognized the stranger fully. The woman who had quietly observed the ceremony was someone from his past. Someone tied to both his life and Eleanor's in ways he had never expected. Who are you?" Eleanor whispered. The woman's gaze flicked to Marcus briefly, and for the first time their eyes met. Recognition flashed in his eyes. Lila, noticing the shift, asked softly, "Marcus, do you know her?" He nodded, jaw tight. "Yes, and this changes everything." The room grew tense. Conversations faltered as Eleanor confronted the woman. Marcus realized that the envelope had unleashed a chain reaction, one that would disrupt not only the wedding but the carefully maintained facade of their past. The woman's identity was no airy revelation. She was connected to decisions and events that had long been buried, secrets that Marcus had assumed were safe. Yet here she was, holding the evidence, exposing the truth in the most public way possible. Marcus's mind raced. He had to act carefully. One misstep, and everything he had built, his reputation, his control over the situation, could collapse. He placed a hand on Lila's shoulder. "Stay close," he said. "This isn't just a wedding anymore. It's a reckoning." The music faltered. Eleanor's expression hardened, a mix of shock and recognition. Guests whispered urgently among themselves, and Marcus knew, with an unsettling certainty, that the night was far from over. By the time the wedding cake was brought out, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The woman's presence and the photograph she had delivered had drawn the attention of nearly every guest. Cameras flashed as whispers spread. Marcus observed every movement, every subtle reaction, planning his next steps carefully. He glanced at Lila. "You're going to witness something tonight that very few people ever see." Lila swallowed nervously. What do you mean?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on the woman, then on Eleanor, then back to the photograph now trembling in Eleanor's hands. "I'll explain when it's over," he said. "For now, we watch, we wait, and we act only when necessary." The stranger's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos she had sown. Marcus realized that she wasn't just delivering information. She was controlling the flow of the revelation, orchestrating the moment with precision. And Marcus knew, deep down, that he had underestimated her. The stranger had brought the past into the present, and the truth, once revealed, would change everything. The whispers in the reception hall grew louder, but Marcus remained calm, his eyes locked on the strand. She moved with a quiet authority, as if she controlled the tempo of the entire room. Guests strained to see, murmuring questions and speculation. Some recognized her, others did not, but everyone sensed that she was central to the unfolding drama. Marcus's pulse quickened as the realization hit him fully. The stranger was not random. She was tied to Eleanor and to secrets from his own past. Memories flooded his mind. The late nights, the boardroom arguments, the documents he had buried, the promises he had made and broken. And now, they were all resurfacing in the hands of this one woman. Eleanor stepped forward, her fingers trembling as she held the photograph. How did you get this?" she demanded. Her voice, usually steady and composed, wavered for the first time. The stranger smiled faintly, her eyes calm and piercing. "I've always had a way of finding the truth," she said softly. "Some things you can't hide forever." Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had expected drama at this wedding, but not this. Not revelations tied so directly to his own life and decisions. He moved closer to Lila, lowering his voice. "You need to stay out of the way. This isn't a social event anymore, it's a reckoning." Lila nodded, though her eyes were wide with apprehension. She sensed the tension radiating from Marcus, understood instinctively that this woman was someone he could neither ignore nor underestimate. The stranger approached Marcus, her gaze piercing. "Marcus Langley," she said clearly, "you know me. You've met me before. And now, it's time for everyone to know the truth." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He recognized her. It had been years since they had crossed paths, and the circumstances of their connection had been buried under layers of ambition, mistakes, and silence. "Why here?" he asked, his voice low. "Why at her wedding? The stranger's Lee." P.S. curved into a faint smile. "Because truth has a way of surfacing when people least expect it, and because Eleanor deserves to know who she's marrying and what you were involved in." Marcus's stomach churned. He knew the revelation would shake Eleanor's world, perhaps irreparably. But the timing, the setting, it was calculated, precise, and designed to ensure maximum impact. Eleanor's face turned pale. She glanced at Marcus, searching for answers in his eyes. "Marcus, what is this?" He hesitated, knowing that a single word could change everything. But before he could respond, the stranger spoke again. "This is what has been hidden for years, and it's time to bring it to light." The room fell silent. Guests leaned in, sensing the gravity of the moment. Cameras flashed as reporters who had been present for the wedding sensed the drama. Marcus realized that the night had evolved into something far beyond a wedding. It was now a stage for confession, for truth, and for confronting past decisions that had been carefully concealed. Lila, sensing Marcus's inner turmoil, placed a hand on his arm. "What do we do?" she whispered. Marcus took a deep breath, steadying himself. "We let it unfold," he said. "The truth has to be seen, and after that, we act." The stranger handed Eleanor another envelope. This one contained documents, proof of decisions Marcus had made that had impacted Eleanor's life in ways she had never known. Contracts, letters, and emails, all revealing actions and intentions previously hidden. Eleanor's hands shook as she examined the contents. The room was hushed, every guest waiting, every eye fixed on the unfolding drama. Marcus stepped forward finally, his voice calm but firm. "Eleanor, I should have told you. I should have been honest. This isn't easy, but it's the truth." Her eyes widened. "Marcus, why now?" "Because," he said, glancing at the strange, "the past doesn't stay buried forever. And some truths cannot be ignored, no matter how much we want them to be." The stranger's role became clear. She was a catalyst, a keeper of truths that Marcus had long avoided. She wasn't there to destroy, but to reveal, to give Eleanor and Marcus the opportunity to confront what had been hidden. As Eleanor absorbed the information, tears welled in her eyes. Her carefully curated world had shifted in an instant. The man she had trusted, the man she had once loved, had been involved in decisions she had never been aware of. And the stranger, this quiet, composed woman, had brought it all to light. Marcus felt the weight of years pressing on him. He had tried to control outcomes, to manage appearances, but the reality was undeniable. Some truths demanded acknowledgement, not suppression. By the end of the evening, conversations had shifted. Guests whispered in clusters, speculation blending with admiration for the stranger's courage. Marcus watched as Eleanor processed the revelation, her gaze occasionally flicking to him, searching for answers. Lila leaned close. "Do you think she'll forgive you?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "I don't know. But at least now, everything is out in the open. There's no hiding, no pretending." The stranger caught his eye one last time, a subtle nod acknowledging the complexity of what had been revealed. Then, as quietly as she had arrived, she moved back into the crowd, fading into the periphery but leaving an indelible impact. Marcus realized that the wedding, which had begun as a simple social event, had become a turning point. Secrets were exposed, relationships tested, and choices confronted. And in the midst of it all, he understood that clarity, though painful, was a necessary step toward resolution. The reception hall, once filled with laughter and music, now carried a heavy tension. Guests whispered, in hushed tones, their eyes flicking between Eleanor, Marcus, and the stranger. The air felt charged, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Eleanor clutched the documents tightly, her knuckles white. She moved to a quieter corner, away from the crowd, and Marcus followed. His heart pounded, not from anxiety over the wedding, but from the enormity of the conversation that was about to unfold. "Eleanor," Marcus began cautiously, "I need you to understand everything in those documents. I never wanted you to be hurt. Decisions were made under pressure, for reasons I thought were right at the time. But I should have been honest with you. I should have told you the truth." Eleanor looked at him, her eyes a mixture of shock, hurt, and disbelief. "Marcus, all these years, how could you? You let me think things were simple, clean, perfect. And now this?" He swallowed, struggling to find the words. "I know. I can't undo the past, but I can explain. I can answer any question you have, and I can take responsibility for the mistakes I made. I needed the truth to come out before it was too late. Meanwhile, Lila observed from a short distance, her mind racing. She had come to this wedding expecting to be a quiet companion, yet she found herself witnessing history unfold. She realized that her presence was crucial, not just as a witness, but as someone who could help mediate the tension. Lila approached cautiously. "Eleanor," she said softly, "sometimes the people who hurt us the most aren't doing it out of malice. They're making choices they think are right, even if they fail." Eleanor's gaze softened slightly. You think you understand, but you weren't part of it." "I wasn't," Lila admitted. "But I've seen Marcus act with integrity, even when it's hard, and I think you deserve to hear that side of the story before you decide how to respond." Marcus glanced at Lila, a faint nod of gratitude acknowledging her intervention. He realized that her calm presence was helping Eleanor process the revelation, giving them a chance to have a conversation rather than a confrontation. The stranger moved closer, no longer in the shadows. "Eleanor," she said, her voice steady, "my role tonight wasn't to punish, it was to reveal. You needed to see the full picture, to make your own decisions based on the truth, not assumptions." Eleanor turned to her, a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "Who are you?" The stranger smiled faintly. "Someone who's been part of Marcus's life for a long time. Someone who understands the weight of choices, the cost of secrecy, and the power of honesty. I'm here to ensure that the truth reaches those it affects most." Eleanor blinked, absorbing the weight of her words. The stranger wasn't an intruder, she was a guide, helping to untangle the web of hidden decisions and past mistakes. Marcus stepped closer. "Eleanor, I know this isn't easy, and I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I want you to know that every choice I made was intended to protect, to lead, and to secure a future, even if it caused confusion and pain along the way. I can't change what happened, but I can be accountable now." Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. The hurt was still there, but beneath it, a flicker of understanding began to emerge. She realized that Marcus had carried burdens she hadn't fully comprehended, decisions made in the shadows, difficult choices that had impacted both their lives. Lila watched silently, knowing her role was done. She had provided the space for dialogue, for reflection, for honesty. Now it was up to Marcus and Eleanor to navigate the consequences. Guests began to notice the shift. Whispers turned to quiet conversations. The tension, while still palpable, was easing. The stranger had done her part. The revelations were out. The truth was clear. And now the path forward depended on dialogue, understanding, and choice. Eleanor finally spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "Marcus, I need time to process all of this, but I also need to know, will you be honest with me from now on?" Marcus nodded, his expression serious and unwavering. "I promise. No more secrets, no more half-truths, just honesty from this point forward." For the first time that evening, Eleanor allowed herself a small, tentative smile. The path to reconciliation was uncertain, but at least now it was possible. As the night progressed, the atmosphere slowly returned to celebration. Guests resumed their conversations, music began to play softly, and laughter returned, albeit tinged with the memory of what had just unfolded. Marcus glanced at Lila. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You helped more than you realize." Lila smiled. "Sometimes, all it takes is someone to listen, to give space for honesty. That's what matters." The stranger, standing at the edge of the hall, caught Marcus's eye one last time. There was a nod, a silent acknowledgement of closure and purpose. Then she slipped out of the room, leaving behind a trail of calm authority and a reminder that truth, once revealed, could change everything. The evening air was crisp as the wedding reception wound down. Guests began to depart, leaving the grand hall quieter than before. The tension that had filled the room earlier had softened into reflection. Conversations were subdued, thoughtful, as if everyone had witnessed something far more significant than a standard celebration. Marcus stood near the terrace, looking out over the city lights. The rain from earlier had left the streets sparkling, reflections dancing across the pavement. Lila joined him quietly, offering no words. Her presence alone was enough. "I never expected tonight to unfold like this," Lila said softly. Marcus shook his head, a faint smile touching his lips. "Neither did I. But sometimes the truth has a way of revealing itself at the worst or best possible moments." Inside the hall, Eleanor lingered near the center, the photograph and documents now tucked safely away. Her expression had shifted from shock to contemplation, then to a tentative calm. She approached Marcus, their eyes meeting across the room. "Marcus," she said, her voice steady, "I don't fully understand everything yet. There are pieces I still need to process. But I see now that you've been honest tonight. I appreciate that." Marcus nodded, his chest tightening with a mixture of relief and anticipation. "I never wanted to hurt you, Eleanor. The choices I made were misguided, yes, but they were never meant to deceive you. I hope that we can start again with transparency." Eleanor paused, then offered a small, cautious smile. "We'll see. It's a start." For Marcus, that small acknowledgement felt monumental. It was more than forgiveness. It was the possibility of rebuilding trust. Outside, the stranger who had sparked the chain of revelations stood at the edge of the terrace, observing the scene. Lila noticed her and approached, curiosity evident. "You're leaving?" Lila asked. The stranger nodded. "My purpose tonight is complete. I don't interfere beyond bringing clarity. Once the truth is revealed, people must make their own choices." Lila studied her for a moment. "You could have stayed anonymous, yet you chose to act." "Why?" The stranger's eyes softened. "Because some truths, when hidden, can fester and cause unintended harm. Tonight, Marcus and Eleanor had the right to see everything before making decisions. I simply facilitated what was necessary." With that, the stranger disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind an air of quiet resolution. Marcus and Eleanor walked out to the terrace together, the sounds of the city filling the space between them. For the first time in years, they were unburdened by secrets. Words hung in the air, unspoken but understood. This night had altered the course of their relationship, revealing the weight of past mistakes and the potential for reconciliation. Marcus turned to Lila. "Thank you for being here, for helping me navigate this. I don't think I could have managed it alone." Lila smiled. "You didn't need me to fix anything. You needed someone to witness, to support, and to remind you that honesty matters. That's all I did." Marcus nodded, gratitude evident in his eyes. Sometimes, even the strongest need guidance. Tonight, you were that guide. As the final guests departed, the city lights reflecting off the wet streets below, Marcus felt a sense of closure. The night had been chaotic, unexpected, and emotionally charged, yet it had brought clarity. He had faced his past, confronted truths he had avoided, and witnessed the transformative power of honesty. Eleanor stood beside him, contemplative but calm. There were still questions to answer, conversations to be had, but for the first time in years, they were on equal footing. No secrets, no assumptions, just the possibility of moving forward. Lila, quietly observing from a short distance, smiled to herself. She had come as a stranger, simply accompanying Marcus, but she had become part of a pivotal moment in two lives. She knew her presence, though subtle, had allowed the truth to surface in a way that might never have happened otherwise. And as she walked away into the night, Lila felt a quiet satisfaction. The evening had been more than a wedding. It had been a lesson in courage, truth, and the unforeseen power of a single person acting with integrity. Marcus watched her disappear, then turned back to Eleanor. "Whatever happens next," he said softly, "we face it together. No more secrets, Eleanor nodded, her expression firm yet hopeful. No more secrets. The night settled over the city, quiet and still, yet charged with the promise of a new beginning. Marcus, Eleanor, and even Lila had been changed by the events of the evening. Lives had intersected, truths had been revealed, and paths had shifted in ways none of them could have anticipated. The stranger had come, unveiled the truth, and departed. Marcus had confronted his past, and in doing so, had the chance to shape a future built on honesty and understanding. And in that moment, under the glimmering city lights, Marcus realized that some revelations, no matter how inconvenient, painful, or unexpected, were the catalysts for growth, redemption, and new beginnings.